I'm Anthony Vella, the paramotor fella who crashed and lived to tell you. I'm home now. As you can see, I'm enjoying the morning with my family. And that's one of the really important things about this podcast with Tucker Gott. The most famous person in all of paramotoring is how the decision to fly a paramotor should be affected by those who depend on your survival. Don't get me wrong, you can be safe flying a paramotor. I wasn't taking every possible step in order to be safe when that nasty thing happened to me. In life, there's temptations. Once you start to get good at something, is you may have the temptation to push the envelope a little bit. It's a great conversation because he's single at the moment. I'm married and I have 4 children. I'm not gonna lie. I tried to film this intro like a few other times before with like my camera and the lights and all this other. And I was like, I'm just gonna pull out my phone and introduce this podcast. And it's the very first episode of the Anthony Vella podcast. Not a very creative name, but I don't care. Oh, and before I close out, I'm trying to get my FBI agent next door neighbor to come in and do a podcast. And his wife is an FBI agent as well. And he says, I have to get it approved. Please submit your questions. And I was like, okay, I want to know if the FBI had a hand in my paramotor crash, JFK, Hillary Clinton's emails, what it's like to not only be an FBI agent, but to be married to an FBI agent like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But they weren't FBI. I got so many questions. Let me know in the comments who you'd like to see as a future guest, as well as how I should introduce myself in the next video. Just hang out with us for the next hour and a half. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You know what to do.
Do need a clap.
Do it, because I can't clap.
Yeah.
I'll break my arm.
That should be the intro. Can't clap. I'm gonna break my arm.
Shear one of the bolts off of my arm. All right, welcome to the Anthony Vella podcast, the very first episode, and it's a very special first episode because I'm with my friend Tucker Gott, who needs no introduction, but he will receive an introduction because the hope for this podcast is that it's not just strictly focused on paramotoring. In fact, the less it has to do with paramotoring, the happier I'll be.
Exactly.
I would like it to be, really like just conversations with interesting people. And you're an interesting person. I'm sure that we're going to have an awesome conversation.
I'm sure we will.
It did get to a point with the Paramotor podcast where I was kind of burnt out on talking about paramotors as much as I love them. Stuff kind of like blends together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can only talk about paramotors so much until you covered all of it.
Right.
Like, what kind of oil do you run?
I don't even want to start that conversation.
Yeah.
When you started out flying paramotors, how many other people were actually making videos back then?
There's definitely one of them whose name I won't mention. But,
Okay. Yeah.
not as many. Probably just a handful. I know James Allred, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He was a big one back then.
Okay, so what kind of videos was he making? And did the videos that he made inspire you to get into flying? Just the other day, you shared some photos on your YouTube of like general aviation aircraft. You were doing some work with skydiving. I think you were a parachute packer, right? Mm-hmm. So what the hell made you think to get into paramotoring?
So from the very, very beginning, very, very beginning, when I was like 2, my mom was a hot air balloon pilot.
Right.
And that was like my first time really being in the sky. Like she has a photo when I was, I think 2, looking through the little foothole.
What's a foothole?
So like the wicker basket has like a little square for you to step in to get into it.
Okay.
But I was like super small, so I couldn't see over the edge. And I would just like look at the little hole.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's got to be kind of creepy to take your little one up into a hot air balloon. I know.
Don't drop them.
At least for my kids, it would be wild because they're so wound up and bouncy. It's like, ooh, don't go over the edge.
No, that was like my first time really flying. And my mom was obviously a huge inspiration in that. And growing up, I was just growing up in the hot air ballooning community. Going through like middle school, it was like get home, do your homework. But at 5 o'clock, we're leaving to go fly the hot air balloon. Like it was just a part of life. And my grandfather was the other big inspiration. He was more into general aviation, fixed wing flying, and involvement in the local airport. So that's how I got involved in the airport. But to be honest, the first taste of paramotoring was the name I don't want to say. The guy rhymes with Shell Danze.
That's super funny. Oh yeah, duh, because he's been doing this for like freaking ever.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw his videos, and the one I remember is like pulling the paramotor out of the truck and getting in the air within 5 minutes, sort of deal.
Oh right.
And that wasn't. I mean, back then paramotors were like even a little bit different, and that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But I always had that in the back of my mind that paramotoring was what I wanted to do. And actually, when I was going through all those nostalgia photos, there was one from 2012, and I was like doing the hot air balloon thing with my mom, and I saw one fly past a trike, and I took a photo, and I said, like, one day I'll have one of these. And it was only a year later, 2013, that I got into it. I always did like odd jobs working at the airport, like pulling weeds and things like that. And the skydiving center opened up at the airport. And there was one year I was pulling weeds, doing that thing for the airport.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the skydivers, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And the owner of the airport who I was working for, she introduced me to the skydivers the year after.
Huh.
And it was, I don't know, sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
And she basically got me the job over there. And the first year I just did like the grounds work, driving the golf cart, getting people to sign waivers, putting harnesses on, just the general odd jobs. Right. And video editing.
Was that your first taste of video editing, or when did you get started on the editing?
That's a good question too. I always like had a fixation with like video editing and filming stuff, kind of from the perspective of like I wanted to document things because I knew like later in life it'd be interesting to watch, like capturing moments like that.
For sure.
And since middle school, I was into RC planes, and I was always trying to figure out how to put
a camera on the
them.
plane.
Yeah. Like before even the early GoPros, I had those little point and shoot cameras, and I would hook a servo to hit the button, and like aerial shots. And I have pictures of the park, the legendary park that now we can't fly out of.
Right. That's a Bethlehem, right? Like in that town or whatever.
Yeah, Bethlehem Township, New Jersey. But I had like aerial videos of that park, and then when the GoPros came out, did that thing, did quadcopters, and I was always making like little musical edits, nothing that ever told a story.
Right.
And then that kind of evolved. I guess after I got the job editing at the skydiving facility and the second year in packing parachutes and editing, I made a decent amount of money for a kid in high school doing that. Like on a good day, you got $10 every pack job. A day that was the busiest day of the summer, I could do like 30 or 35. So I'd get like $300 in a day.
Oh, damn.
And 2 summers of that, I made enough that by the end of the second year, which was between high school and college, I was like, I have enough money to do this paramotor thing. And I remember it was like, I think it was like September. Yeah, September. I was like, I have enough money to do this. And I remember thinking that like I already had experience in fixed wing by then.
Right, because there's a photo of you standing next to a plane, and I don't want to deviate from what you're saying, but was that your plane?
No, it was just like the rental.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
That going back a couple years, like I started fixed wing when I was 15 and got enough hours. I had like 15 hours by the time I was 16.
Oh, cool.
My 16th birthday, a couple days after I got to solo. And then 16 to 17, kept at it, got my private right after I turned 17. And the next year when I was packing, had enough money, I was 18. So I remember thinking like I could afford this, but I already know how to fly a plane and I have some general experience like doing tandem skydiving. Sure. So I was like, I could teach myself how to do this. And I had that thought, and my mom was actually a big influence on like, no, you should actually go to training.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did, because there is a lot that you don't realize you don't know. So I remember going to the bank and taking out, I think like $8,000 cash.
Damn.
And that was enough for like the training at Aviator back then. It was all different. That was like the early days. And
what was that like? What was Aviator then? Because now Aviator is basically the household name for paramotoring. I think for schools, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think when I went there, it was like Eric's second year, I want to say, of even starting the school.
Right.
So back then it was kind of like run out of his garage and just going out kiting the general things, but it's just me and Eric. There was one other guy in the class. I think there was just two of us.
Was it just Eric instructing at that point?
And his brother James was there at the time. So that's how I got to meet him.
Okay.
And yeah, just two of us in the class. It was super chill. I think like by the third day of kiting, I was ready to do the first solo with him. But yeah, that was like the very beginning of it all.
Let me just preface for the viewers. If you don't know who Tucker is, what the hell? I mean, Tucker is by far the biggest name in paramotoring. You have like 1.6 million subscribers on YouTube. And Instagram, you've got, like 50,000 or something?
I think 104.
104.
I think so.
Okay, so I was off by a long shot. Your Instagram page has grown very quickly. But yeah, I mean, for me, like, that's why I asked you, what was there anybody who specifically got you inspired to try out this paramotoring thing? And he who shall not be named was the person for you. And for me, of course, it was you, as I think it is for most people who get into paramotoring. Man, I remember just sitting in my house and watching your videos. The way that you came across to me is you were just this young kid with a flying machine, and it was like, gosh, darn it, I want to do that. What a neat concept. And so I don't want to make this podcast episode like too strictly focused on paramotoring because, as mentioned, like I kind of gotten burnt out on that over the years. But you've grown and you've expanded from just doing paramotoring to other things. But of course, I want to know like the backstory as much as I can, and probably just get to know you as a person more. You came over to my house, like 2 weeks ago? I mean, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Something like that. And then we had met in Florida years ago, almost 6 years ago. And it was awesome getting to see you, obviously for the first time, being that you were the person who got me into this, or I should say inspired me. Kind of like by the time I'd seen your videos, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. When did you get started with making videos on paramotoring?
With paramotoring, I think it was just like a natural evolution because I was already making like all these little edits with RC airplanes and stuff.
Yeah.
So naturally, I just was wearing a GoPro for all my paramotor flights. And naturally, I just kind of made musical edits of that. But that never caught on, really. There was one video that got some views on Reddit where it was just like me flying around in the winter time. And it was just chopped up to a song. And then it kind of evolved to me and my buddy that were flying at the local airport.
Right.
We were making these goofy videos of like just goofing off, like being young and dumb and kind of just learning this new sport. We were making those videos and they were starting to get a little bit of traction. I think I gained I was up to like 5,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube. And long story short, to summarize it, the job I was working, packing parachutes, I had been doing it for long enough anyway, like 4 or 5 years.
Right.
There was kind of a dispute with another employee there. And it was at this point where I was like, I'm not going back. I don't want to work with this guy anymore. So it was kind of forcing me. It was one of those negatives that you look back in life where at the time it sucked, but it really kickstarted this whole thing, to be honest, because I was in a position where I was like, obviously, I'm not going to be packing parachutes the rest of my life. I've been doing it long enough, and now I don't want to go back and work next to this employee. So I was like, my YouTube has like 5,000 subscribers. I wasn't making much of any money on it, but I was like, I think this is my time to like really kickstart YouTube and go in. Wow. And it was like, I didn't really have much of a plan B.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it like, I know I can get views on YouTube. I had like that one video that got attention on Reddit.
What was the video? The one that was to the music with the winter time?
Yeah, the winter one. That one was in the back of my head. It got like 200,000 or 300,000 views. And I was like,
wow,
this could actually be something.
Right.
So then I was like, I'm just going to have to fully commit to this. And I think that was 2017.
Wow.
And
that's huge, dude. That's huge to like, strap down and be like, all right, I'm going for it. Like the odds of, okay. So a lot of parents, tell their kids, when you grow up, you can be anything you want to be. And it's like, not really. I mean, you find parents who will say, like, if you want to grow up and be in the NFL and get your Super Bowl ring, you can do it. As long as you put in the effort. You know, the reality is no. There's so many aspirational young folks out there who are told things like that. And it's like, well, where is the parent who's saying the odds of it are also unbelievably low? Like, yeah. And I think the same thing is the case with YouTube. I think there's a lot of young people who think that they can maybe get 1 million subscribers one day, but the odds of it are like getting into the NFL. It's crazy. But there you were thinking,
well, and even more crazy, like when you look at social media in 2024, it's like a big thing now. It's like a career path, influencers. But in 2017, it was much less than that.
Right.
And I did have that conversation with my parents at one point, like
about the YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, I went to Rowan University for electrical engineering.
Okay.
Out of high school.
Right.
So that year between high school and college, I learned to fly a paramotor, and then I went for electrical engineering. And the only reason I went was because people told me I was smart, and I was just like, go for engineering. Right. But I had no passion for it, and I immediately knew that first semester. Same time, first semester, I watched the documentary McConkey, and it's just about this Red Bull athlete who is a pro skier, turned base jumper, and it just got me hyped on living life. Huh. So all these things came together at once, and then simultaneously, like the YouTube thing popping up and that kind of becoming mandatory. But I left the Rowan University for electrical engineering and went to a local community college for business.
Okay.
And it was just kind of like I was going for an associate's in business.
Yeah.
And I had no real career path aside from YouTube.
Right.
And I remember my parents both sitting me down, and like they're very supportive for anything. But like you said, realistically, it's like, is YouTube going to work? Packing parachutes wasn't a life career.
Yeah.
And they had that conversation with me of around that time when I committed to YouTube, and they were like, what are you going to do? Like, if this doesn't work, like you got to figure something out. And I kind of took it seriously. And I was like, if they're saying that, there's got to be some weight to it. But that first year, it was like, I think it was 6 or 8 months of just posting YouTube videos with 5,000 subscribers.
How often would you do it?
Back then, I was trying to push out like 2 or 3 videos a week.
Yeah.
And it was just like all these random things of like, oh, here's how you build a helmet. Like it was kind of
okay, because I'm trying to establish on the timeline of your videos, because for me, when I would watch your videos early on, like I was fascinated with your early videos because I don't know, I think, you know, you're a funny guy. The humor combined with the amazing thing that you were actually doing and your ability to talk about it while you're flying is what appeared to be like a kid. I mean, really, yeah. I mean, 18, 19, how you're...
Yeah, first year of college, really.
Right. So it's like, oh my gosh, if he can do it, why can't I do it? It's amazing to see this thing unfold where you had this plan. Maybe the business degree, I don't know, did that help? Maybe not.
I slept through most of the classes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think college for a lot of folks is just... mumbo jumbo. There goes all the viewers. The parents are like, turn that shit off.
Don't listen to him.
Yeah. No, but I mean, really, I think that, you know, obviously, yeah, college works for a lot of people, but for pursuing, man, the odds of you making it the odds were not in your favor, I don't think.
Yeah.
You flew under a bridge. Mm-hmm. I remember that in one of the earlier videos. I remember just some of the different fields that you take off, and then in my mind, imagining being there out at a field and like, God, I'd never actually seen a paramotor in person. But I felt like through your videos, I could really imagine just in a childlike way, the ability to just throw this thing on my back and just take off, and just the ability to just go and find that isolation.
Escape. Yeah,
that escape. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what kind of money were you making from YouTube in the beginning? Because from what I remember, YouTube used to pay its content creators better, if I'm not mistaken. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think the percentage was probably better, but the way it evolved in the first year, like I know I was making less than $1,000 a month on just YouTube ad revenue.
For how long was that you were making about? How much were you making out of the gate when you started, and when did you start to make some money and say, oh, I could actually, it's working. This plan is working.
So just off basic memory, I'd have to go look at the actual videos, but I was just making those casual like vlogs. I had the whole, I think I called it Paravlog, and I was numbering them in the beginning.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't copy that. In some of my videos, I totally do. On the thumbnail, it says Paravlog, but it's because I saw it on yours.
Well, that was just like...
sorry, I stole it.
Like you said, the whole idea was just like making it accessible. And from the beginning, it was like, I just wanted to inspire people to check out the sport and change their lives like it changed mine.
Sure.
But I was making those Paravlogs and not making basically any money doing it, less than $1,000 a month, nothing to live off of. And as that evolved, shout out to Team Fly Halo. They were some of the first people that picked up any attention with me and said they wanted to help me.
Nice.
So in the very beginning, I remember Shane invited me out for this trip in Washington.
Right.
Because he had seen my videos and he saw the value in it. So we did this.
Washington State?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did this. It was a recon mission for the Icarus X race at the time.
Okay.
So that was some content I made with him. And I remember the first time I had an exhaust, I think the bracket cracked.
Okay.
And they sent me a brand new exhaust. And I remember that being like, oh my God, I'm sponsored.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That feeling, I still remember just unboxing this brand new exhaust. I was like, I have this kind of...
I'm somebody.
Yeah. My paramotor wasn't nice at the time. It was like, these guys hooked me up. Like, it was cool.
What do you mean your paramotor wasn't nice at the time?
It was
Wasn't
a little
it
shady.
Was it the Scout? I don't remember.
So I had the Blackhawk first.
That's right.
And that thing was vibrating apart. But then I bought a used Scout Enduro.
Okay.
And it still wasn't the greatest, but it was much better than the Blackhawk.
For sure.
But,
gotcha.
Then Team Fly Halo was associated with Scout. They brought me out to this trip that Miro was doing in the Southwest. That was my first experience doing that. That eventually led to like getting invited to Iceland. And I think it was within the first year of just like them helping me out. I was putting out better content.
Well, did they pay to fly you out to Washington?
I want to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure they paid for like all the expenses for it.
I mean, I'm sure that felt good as well.
Yeah, like, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, getting like, I mean, they were the first ones that really believed and saw some value behind me.
Right. What an amazing thing that they must reflect on that now, that they helped you get to where you are, which we're getting to, but Iceland?
Yeah, Iceland was amazing. And I think it was when I was in Iceland that I had posted the McDonald's video prior.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So I remember I was just doing these vlogs, and in one of the videos, I flew into the quarry, and it was like diving the quarry or something. It was a paravlog thing.
Okay.
And on my way back, I flew past the McDonald's, and I was like, oh, there's totally like a spot I could land there. I should do that next time.
Right.
And the more that idea like was in my head, the more I started playing out the concept of the video. And I was like, I knew that this was going to be a thing before I filmed it.
Okay.
I never knew it was going to be as big of a thing.
Yeah. You didn't think it'd be almost 50 million views.
Not to that extreme.
Yeah.
But I remember like creating the whole, like the plot line of the video that I wanted to do.
Right.
I remember like, I was obviously super big into coffee back then, like I am now. And I like took 2 shots of espresso and I was like trying to get myself hyped up. And looking back on it now, I think that video is super cringy because I'm just like rattling off these like, yeah, bro, like trying to like hype it up a little bit.
Don't watch my videos.
Looking back at that one, I thought it was cringy, but it obviously worked.
Yeah.
But I posted that. I'm pretty sure it got on like #1 in Reddit videos. And when it was #1 on the video subcategory, it got on the front page of Reddit. And the Reddit viewership started pumping up, obviously, the YouTube.
I didn't even know you had do you have a Reddit?
I dabbled in it back then.
Yeah.
But I never really got big into it. But I was like looking at it for trends, basically.
Okay. Yeah,
and it got on like that trending wave. And I remember being in Iceland at the time when it was getting views, and I would pull up my phone. I was like, I'm actually making money off of this.
Right.
And
oh my gosh, yeah.
A terrible old laptop that I was making videos on. And I was like, when I get home, I'm going to buy the nicest laptop I can get. Because I actually was getting paid off this video. And I was like, finally.
Yeah.
The numbers were like actually pretty insane at the time.
What numbers are we talking?
$6,000 or $8,000 in a month off the video.
And the
when
views,
it was blowing up.
the views at that point, how many views did it have?
I think it broke like 1 million when I was in Iceland at that time, like that week.
Yeah, you must have been like freaking out. Like, oh my God.
Well, and I was in like the most beautiful place in the world, and I'm checking my phone and I'm like,
I've made it.
It's working. Like finally.
Yeah.
The McDonald's thing obviously propelled so much after that.
Right.
And it was such a big like turning point. And everything after that was just like, I'm going to do this whole career and make it as much, capitalize on this thing as much as I can.
How often did you find yourself studying the algorithms and the inner workings of YouTube's system to promote? I mean, even in the word algorithm, there's a lot of thought that goes into that because nobody fully understands this algorithm.
Yeah, totally. That's the whole thing is like, as much as I tried to study it, it was like, I quickly learned that there's just going to be this limiting factor of like the McDonald's video blew up, but that's not sustainable of like flying to fast food restaurants. So then I'd obviously make other content and that would get less views, much less views, but that developed like the core audience. And then I obviously tried, like I'd do Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell. And I was like, how many times can I spin this? But it was like, that worked. And like a lot of those other videos got millions of views as well. But then it's like, that's not sustainable. One, just due to the nature of it. Like there's not
enough fast food places.
Yeah. And then narrow it down to ones you can land at and then the weather to do it and like not break any laws. And that became a limiting factor. And as much as like the views blew up from the McDonald's video, I remember in the very beginning, you see your real-time views and you see like the numbers, and the first time it happens of like you post something and it doesn't do well, you're like, oh my God, my life's over.
It can crush you.
It was like, this career is dead. Like, but the more times it always comes back and you think of a new idea or a new concept and then the next success propels you, but then it crashes again. And the more crashes I had, I was like, okay, this is just the nature of it. It's going to go up and down and I'll come up with a new idea, a new concept, and it'll all work out in the end.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it still sucks when you post something and you see that it doesn't do well, but you just kind of have to know that that's the nature of it and you're going to do something later.
I assume that you were like totally loving every bit of it, maybe even to include the roller coaster effect. I mean, ultimately it seems like you were there and you had to come up with these thoughts, but I wonder today, how do you feel about making content today versus it before?
That's a really good question.
And I want to also get your thoughts on that moment you broke 1 million subscribers. The moment you flew through the glass ceiling.
I don't know. I remember like hitting 5,000 and 10,000 subscribers more so than I remember passing 1 million.
Wow.
Because I think I quickly realized that like subscribers at least don't, especially now, mean much at all. It's more so like real-time views.
Okay. Yeah.
And
from a making money standpoint.
Right. Treating it as a business.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool thing to brag about, I guess, if you're into that, but I'm not. Especially now, it's more so the core audience, which I think I'm like 30 to 60,000 people that will watch like a normal video. Mm-hmm. That became kind of more of a focus of having a core audience. And then launching merch was a big thing because prior to that, I was just riding off of these ad revenues. Yeah. But looking at it from a business, like branching into merch was one thing. Sponsorship stuff through like, not in the paramotor industry so much, but like random Anchor sponsorships and stuff like that.
What do you mean by that? I don't understand Anchor sponsorships.
Like Anchor, the battery brand.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. So they linked up with you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. A couple, just like diversifying in general through sponsored videos.
Yeah.
And then now selling gear, paramotoring, gliders. And
paragliders, yeah, for
all
sure.
that stuff. That made it so that I could see it more as a business and not feel like I was going to end my whole career when
Right.
the YouTube views went down.
Right.
Because I could always have more diverse things coming in.
Yeah.
So I kind of focused on that and not so much like the subscriber numbers and building it more like a business. And that made me feel a lot more stable when
Right.
those things started to work out.
No, that's super cool because I did notice that. And there obviously came a point in your career life, I guess, where I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice a difference from your earliest videos to your more recent videos. And your videos that you're putting out are still badass and the views are really, really high. You're pulling in an audience of individuals who obviously don't fly. If you just do the quick math, there's about, what do you think, like 3,000 people who fly paramotors?
Yeah, probably.
Something
in
like
the
that.
US.
But then you're getting like hundreds of thousands of views on a lot of your videos, but they're certainly different. I mean, you've got the nice haircut, you're clean cut, you've put on a lot of muscle. This isn't the geeky little kid that had with long hair. And I've always been amazed at your ability to convert that audience and put out shirts. A lot of people create merch, but yours are actually really badass. It started with that airfoil shirt, right?
Yeah.
Did you mention that in the McDonald's video? Or you were
that
wearing
was the launch
it,
of it. And that's a really good point because that was part of the whole thing of like, I was like, this video is going to get views and not just get ad revenue, but I launched it on like Teespring. I feel like as far as content now, I waver back and forth between like, I get kind of obsessed with like quality stuff, like these deep dives.
Like the video you did with me was...
Yeah, that whole like investigative journalism thing I'm interested in now. And then the deep dives into like paramotor reviews, like I just did the electric paramotor and trying to make a really polished, nice edit.
That was a
really
lot of
informative
content on the electric paramotor. You covered all the bases and then something.
Yeah, that's what like I've been really interested in that and thinking of it from the perspective like what just makes me happy because normally that is what comes through in a video and makes the video successful. Those types of videos like the AliExpress, that makes me happy and I really like doing those.
Good.
But then I feel like I'll do those and I'll work for a month hard doing that. And then I just want to pick up the camera, make minimal cuts, no music, and just like go out and film a quick adventure.
Yeah.
And then I'll do that for a little bit and then come back. Right. So I kind of try to strike a balance of like product reviews are going to get old, but then I want to go back to like, this is the essence of paramotoring and going on adventures and just rambling about whatever.
At what point do you kind of like burn out? Not even just burn out, but like lose the passion entirely.
There's definitely a balance. And I remember early on when I was doing this stuff with Team Fly Halo, I remember Shane saying something like, we're making a rule after sunset, we can't talk about paramotors.
Oh, nice.
And at the time,
I
I was so obsessed with paramotors. Like you get into it and it's one of those things that if you're a passionate person, you're just like, this is my life.
Yeah.
And that phase has definitely gone away. But now I find myself just taking breaks. Like right now, I don't think I've flown in like 2 weeks. It's like, I'm okay with it. Like I will go out and do a base jump because I really like that and I don't film that and I just enjoy that. Focusing on other parts of life, I guess. But then I've found that if I take a little break, eventually that passion comes back and I'm like, I need to go fly around some cliffs.
That sort of stuff like scares the hell out of me. It's like one thing if you're flying paramotors, there's some risk there. It's another thing if now all of a sudden you've got a motorcycle and you're riding that motorcycle around and that's contributing, that's increasing your overall risk. And then you're doing, like the base jumping and things like that. And you still have that motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you ride motorcycles,
Yeah.
you do the paramotoring thing, and you base jump, which is something I would love to do. Oh my gosh.
It's risk versus reward. And I think the reward part is often kind of slept on because you can look at the risk and you can like mitigate the risk as much as possible. But the reward part is super important too, because like I said in the beginning, I was so passionate and it was like, I would do more risky things because I was genuinely getting such a big reward from it.
Yeah.
But now the reward has diminished a bit because honestly, it's not this obsession and it's not as deep of a thing as the beginning. So I found myself like in base jumping, for example, a couple of days ago, we were on this opening a new exit, some spot that had never been jumped before. And I was with 2 other guys and the one guy was confident about it and he did it, but I was like, I don't need this. I don't have the itch to say I jumped this new exit. Like, it doesn't fuel me enough. Even though the risks were mitigated and it was totally doable, I was like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
Just the thought of hurting myself, having a cliff strike, breaking my leg, I was like, why would I jump here when I don't need that? And I can jump 50 feet over this way and it's way safer.
Right.
So I just decided to go over there, and I have no shame. It's not like I need to fuel my ego to say I did something crazier.
Right.
So I think the reward part is super important in all of it. And same thing with my motorcycle. I went through a phase where I was like really gung ho on riding fast, but now I'm like, I don't get anything from it. So why do it?
That's really interesting though, how people tend to do the F around and find out when they start doing something. I was the same way, where when I started flying the paramotor, I advanced to a much more advanced glider very quickly. Like, I had my first paraglider was a 26 meter Ozone Spider. I think the original version of it. And one of my friends at that time, he had a Dudek Snake. And I think you had one of those as well.
Yeah, an XX. I think
okay,
it was,
yeah. So, and that's what I flew. That's obviously, the F around and find out mindset that I had early on. The Ozone Spider isn't enough. I want something more. It's like you getting on the motorcycle and you freaking flying down the road, which I totally, the last time I rode a crotch rocket, I was flying on that thing going down the mountain, 130 miles per hour, I think. And there were no cars on the road, and people can judge me all they want. Like, I'm just being honest, because I know that it's reckless. And today I feel like, even before the injury, gunning it, I would rather just stay away from the street bike, and maybe alternatively knowing that I lack the discipline to use the motorcycle in the way that it was intended to go fast. I mean, I think that's, ultimately the design of crotch rockets.
Yep.
So for me, instead, I would buy maybe like a Harley Davidson, like a Street Bob or a Dyna, something like that, where I can just cruise and appreciate that beautiful sound that the Harley Davidson makes. Like, for me, that's what I like. Your bike is kind of more geared towards the crotch rocket.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it goes fast. I wanted to ask you though, because honestly, the last time I saw you a couple weeks ago, I was feeling like there's pretty high chance you were going to get back into paramotoring. And then I saw your video and I was honestly a little bit surprised, but
were you sad?
Well, I completely support, like, you're in a much different situation than I am, and I totally respect your decision, but I was a bit surprised. So I just wanted to kind of hear what, the thoughts behind it, what the conversation was, and what your thoughts are.
From the moment that I was able to actually settle into the hospital bed and have a conversation, my immediate thoughts were, I'm going to get back into this. I was basically viewing it as I got bucked off the horse and I'm going to get back on. And I hadn't considered just how much pain I had caused everybody else. I was very narrow-minded. It's just thinking about me, like, I fell. I'm okay. I'm going to get back on. But the thing that was really important that I wasn't considering was just how close I came to dying. I think that accident was seriously as close as somebody could get to dying without actually dying.
Yeah.
I escaped being paralyzed, which is absolutely, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've been able to recover to the point where just 2 months ago, I had a serious crash and had 4 major surgeries, was in the ICU for 2 weeks, and then in rehab. Even today, like, I had to call my nurse called me and said, hey, can I come to the house and check up on you? And the physical therapist, I had to push a lot of things to come out here and hang out with Tucker today. But my wife is my best friend. Like there's nobody I care about more in this world than my wife. Like she's number one to me. And there was a point where paramotoring was number one. I was flying paramotors before I had actually met my wife. And I guess I kind of got into this mindset where I was becoming too selfish. Like I understand that fixation, especially earlier on in the sport, where you described it's consuming. You're in Iceland, and what Shane Denherter says, 6 o'clock, no, when the sun sets, no talking about paramotors, but it's all you can think about.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that as well. I think most people who get into paramotoring, rightfully so, are obsessed with it because it's freaking amazing. I guess to some degree, I also felt the pressure of like YouTube. I'd had a surge of subscribers, nothing like, a ton, but for me, it was, I more than doubled the subscriber base that I had. And I thought, wow, this will be really cool if I can get back to flying, which is stupid. It's a dumb thing to do. When things started to slow down, I started to reconsider just how much pain I caused my wife. Mm-hmm. And I could be gone right now. That's a really serious thought. Everybody's going to die someday, but I could be dead right now in an untimely manner. And my wife would be left alone with four children. And money-wise, it's like, how is she going to sustain herself? How are the kids going to get the things that they need to grow up and to become adults? I don't know, man. I've heard people talk about the whole there's life insurance. And it's like, are we really having this conversation? Yeah. Are we really saying, don't worry, financially you'll be okay? It's like, dude, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn serious.
4 kids growing up without a father, the rest of their life is completely impacted.
1 kid without their father is a tragedy.
Yeah.
A wife with a husband who's departed early is a heartbreaking story. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be responsible for that sort of thing. And so then the question comes into my mind, can you really fly? Can you ever totally eliminate all chances of dying flying a paramotor? So I return the question back to you. What do you think about that?
I had a couple thoughts. First, trying to put myself in your shoes, because I don't have a wife or kids or anything.
Right.
The way I look at all these risky sports I partake in, I live in a somewhat selfish way where I want to say, if I were to die tomorrow for any reason, get hit by a car or paramotor crash, I don't want to have any regrets. And that means I want to explore these passions and do everything I can as safely as I can, so that if some unforeseen thing happens, I can rest easy knowing I had a fun life, kind of like a hedonistic approach.
Okay.
But I feel like if I were to have a family, kids, that priority is no longer priority. It's being there for that family. And that has to take the back seat in some way. And now I have to live knowing that if anything were to happen to me, it's not just me that's going away. It's the impact on everyone else.
Yeah.
So
come on. You've got a mom and dad and a sister who love you. You've got you're soon to be an uncle.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I don't know if that was a secret.
I haven't mentioned it yet, but it's not a secret.
Oh,
it will be mentioned eventually. So,
sorry,
I'm gonna be an uncle.
Congratulations.
It's all good.
No, but even if you're not a husband or a father, you're still hurting people really bad. And truth be told, for you specifically, you're hurting like 1.6 million people.
That's a whole nother thing too. Yeah.
But, obviously those aren't the most significant people in your life. You have a circle of people who care about you.
Yeah.
But it's like this. It's like this push pull kind of feeling. Like you're being pulled into doing the things that you want to do and that you're passionate about and you love. But then you're also getting the push away from it. Not you specifically, but in my situation, I do get pushback from my wife, and I can't blame her at all for feeling that way. Because if I was to put myself in her shoes, I'd say I don't want to live a day without you. Like, I want you here, and I think it's a heavy topic. But I think that people sometimes lie to themselves and think that people die in paramotoring, people die in base jumping, but they don't really grasp the fact that it actually could be them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There's so many things I want to say on that. And I feel like my perspective is a little different because, knock on wood, fake wood.
Yeah. Oh, better find some real wood.
I feel like, obviously people on YouTube view me as like a risky person. That's the whole name of the brand.
Risky biscuits, but baby.
Relative to my peers, I've been, one, very fortunate, and two, very smart and safe. And I think two things play into that. One is discipline. And I feel like I'm just generally a very disciplined person, and I try to stay within my limits.
Okay.
And make a slow progression, even though sometimes it doesn't look slow, but staying within my limits, and that's like discipline and knowing yourself. And I saw a comment recently, I think on something you had posted, where a fellow paramotor pilot said he realized he couldn't trust himself. He had to step away because he thought he was fine, and he made a mistake that almost ended in catastrophe. And he realized, I can't actually trust myself. I need to step away. And I think that's a big thing. If you're a type of person that you can't really trust yourself. I've been like very disciplined, but I've also been very scared, which is the other thing.
Yeah.
And I think, again, a lot of people wouldn't see that, but I am terrified of what could go wrong.
Sure.
And I think that plays into why in 11 years of paramotoring, knock on wood, the worst thing I say is I stubbed my toe.
Right.
And relative to a lot of my peers, most people I know have had a reserve throw or a broken bone or something, a water landing, something that was like, really scary.
Yeah.
I guess from my perspective, like I've been able to mitigate it really well, and that's my end goal. And I think it comes back to some of the people I hung out with in the early days of skydiving. They were very mature, like skydivers that had been jumping forever, and their goal was, I need to go home at the end of the day. It was never, I need to look the coolest. I need to, do the lowest barrel roll. Like none of that matters. It's like, I need to go home at the end of the day and survive and do this in the long term. And I think that's how I kind of looked at it from the beginning. But the thing that really shook that up was recently losing Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff was like one of the most conservative, safe guys. I never worried about him having an accident or doing something stupid. Like he was very responsible, more so than myself.
Yeah.
And still, we don't know exactly what happened to him, but I would categorize it more in you can only mitigate risk so far. And then at the end of the day, we're flying on fabric wings in the sky. Like you can't mitigate all of the risk naturally.
Yeah.
It's like a race car, you can put a roll cage and airbags and everything, but still if you're going 200 miles an hour, you're more risky than sitting parked.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you can't get rid of all of it. And that was the thing with Jeff was like, it happened to him. Even though I can mitigate it as well as I think I've done so far, it could happen to me very easily. Like
sum up for the listeners what happened to Jeff. How he passed away. What you believe occurred.
Yeah, that was the hard thing because there was no GPS, there was no footage, there was no witnesses. So like piecing it together was really difficult. But he was flying his trike on a Sirocco, which was slightly overloaded. And I think what it came down to was the combination of the glider was found fully trimmed in, which is not normal. It should be neutral, which is out a little bit. And then more so, the weather conditions turn misty, and water can affect the way the glider flies, and it makes it more prone to parachutal stall. And especially if a glider gets wet, you want to trim it out and fly fast. But he was trimmed all the way slow, and I don't know why, but the best theory I could come up with was parachutal stall. The glider was trying to restart. He had thrown his reserve, but it didn't inflate. It was found underneath the glider. So my best theory was that it was parachutal stall, maybe restarted and tried to fly it exactly the wrong time just to hit hard enough. But that was one of those things that, like, obviously that's the best speculation, but if it happened to him, I could make the same error.
What did the coroner say?
Blunt force trauma.
Just that?
Yeah.
No specifics on limbs, broken bones, things like that? Nothing about the aorta being ruptured?
No, I only remember it saying blunt force trauma, and friends that were there after the fact that saw him said he was just sitting there peacefully. Like,
wow.
Nothing brutal or gnarly.
Gosh, man, what a nightmare to stumble across your friend like that. You know, when my really good friend passed away last year, I was, flying with him. I remember getting the phone call from him the night before in response to my Facebook post to our local flying group. And I'd made a post saying, hey, weather looks good for tomorrow morning. If anybody wants to come join me and fly, I'll be at Santa Teresa Airport in the morning. And nobody messaged. I don't think anybody responded and said that they would be going. But I did get a phone call from my friend Lee Boone. And gosh darn, man, his voice was always just so cheery. Such a wonderful person. Like when you'd speak to him, man, yeah, he's such a good person. You mentioned that Jeff was a conservative, pilot, and Lee was the same way. Very, very conservative with all of the aircrafts he flew. He owned his own Cessna. He had two paramotors. He'd do hang gliding. He'd paraglide, free flight, and he was very skilled in all of them. But that day that he was flying that flex wing trike, he was at about 1,000 feet, and I don't understand the physics of flex wings, but I asked some of the friends who do have some experience with flex wings, and I think that his glider had stalled on one side and went into a flat spin, because as I was watching him, like, dude, it was just like the conditions were perfect, and I was watching him as like the sun was rising. And he's coming towards me, and then all of a sudden, he's just going down, spinning. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm cursing a lot in the headset, like just panicking for him. Like, I know something's wrong. I get in those fractions of a second, like, I mean, every small moment of it felt like it was going so slow, and thinking, oh my God, my friend's about to die. And he did. He went all the way down, but when he hit the ground, it was on the street next to this diner that was like adjacent to the airport that we had both taken off from. And when he hit the ground, the hang glider, powered hang glider, exploded on impact, like huge fire, black smoke just billowing into the air. And the thing was just burning. And I'm circling overhead, like wondering if there's somewhere that I can land. And I had a passenger with me. It was one of my students, but he didn't actually see the crash. He didn't see him. And I'm circling and I'm thinking to myself, cursing, like almost like cursing at God, like in so angry and sad. But there was no way for me to get down. In the flex wing aircraft was just like pancaked into the pavement. And eventually I give up on the idea of landing there because I didn't want to obviously risk my student's life now. There was nothing, I knew nothing could be done.
Yeah, it's helpless.
Yeah. And so I make my way over to the airport and I landed and I'm unstrapping myself as quickly as possible. I see another friend that had come out to fly, and he's the glider laid out, ready to take off. And I hit the kill switch and turn off the paramotor, and I get out and I'm looking at him. I'm like to this my friend, and I'm like, "You're not flying." Like, no, like pack it up, dude. Like Lee just crashed, and I think I told him I think he's dead when I knew it in my mind that he was.
Yeah.
And then my other friend, Jared, came like flying around the corner in his car, like tires squealing, and he comes to a stop and he just opens the door to his car and gets out so quickly. And he just walks over to me and he's shaking his head and he's like, he's gone. And I asked my student, I was like, please put my paramotor away. Like, put the glider away. I'm really sorry. Like, please help me get everything packed away. And I got into my friend's car and we raced back over to the crash where he went down. And the fire truck was out there, and there was like a police officer that had gotten there pretty quickly. And I kind of like quickly walked over to the crash. And I don't want to say what I saw. It was a very scarring image because of the fire. And it's not how you would want to see your friend for the last time. The weeks that followed, I felt like a zombie. Like I felt like I was going through the motions, like my body was on autopilot. A few more of our friends had showed up at the crash site, and I went over to the police officer, I think he came over to me and he asked, like, were any of you witnesses? And I said, I was flying with him. And he goes, okay. And he's just gathering some information. And I asked the police officer, I said, he has a family. Are you guys going to like reach out to the family? And he kind of seemed like nonchalant, like, oh yeah, I mean, we can do it or you can do it. And it's whatever. And the consensus from our circle of friends who were now on scene decided like we need to call his wife, because that's what we would want. We would want a friend to reach out. And I remember one of my friends placing the phone call to his wife, and he just so anxiously or told her, Lee crashed, he didn't make it. And she's like, what? Hello? What? And he's like, Lee crashed and he died. And his two little girls were sitting in the back of the car, because the wife had the call on speaker playing through the car's audio. And the first thing that came through after he finally got the words out of his mouth were the daughters crying and like screaming, and then the wife cursing at the friend who had informed her. We were all standing there listening to this, and it's like, oh my God, no, we didn't know that she'd answered on speakerphone. This is so, it backfired on us. This is a terrible situation. It's the worst feeling you can feel in your life, being there and seeing the consequences of an aviation-related crash. And it's not to say that this is something that is exclusive to aviation. Obviously, there's horrific crashes that happen on motorcycles and cars and vehicles, boats on the water. There's things can happen. It's the pain that the family and friends of the individual who passes away that has to deal with that, and that's what you're responsible for. That's what I'm responsible for is the amount of damage you cause to all of those who will be deeply impacted by your early departure.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's basically, when I think of flying again, every part of me wants to, but I need to do everything I can if I am going to pursue the thing that I love so much, which is flying. I have to take those steps to be safe, or else I die and I wreak havoc on my family. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. I think similar to you having this like experience with your friend, in paramotoring, I escaped it for several years, but it wasn't up until like 2-3 years ago that I lost a friend and then lost another friend and lost another friend, and it all hit hard all at one time. And I think it's not really talked about often, but like, I think if you're involved in these sports long enough, something is bound to happen where you're going to either be a part of a crash where someone gets hurt or unfortunately lose a friend. And like, as much as we can make it safe and we're just flying around having a great time, experience the most beautiful thing ever, like, you have to remember we are flying this stupid little fabric wing that can fall out of the sky, and you are bound to lose a friend. And that's what makes it like so real.
Right.
That like I said, I escaped it for so long, and then I saw the same effects of all the families and all the friends and all the people that forever, the rest of their lives, are going to be impacted by this, or the trauma it causes. It's heavy. The sport is not a casual sport.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just going to pick up, I don't know, rollerblading on the weekend and just do it casually. Like, it's a heavy thing. Yeah.
I totally agree. And it comes down to individuals. And my hope for this episode of this podcast is this Kickstarter is that spouses will also watch it, not just the individuals who are considering getting into the sport, but also those whose opinions matter the most. If somebody wants to fly, I think that if they have that discipline, that they should. Like, oh man, it's one of these things. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you're giving somebody the green light when they too can realistically die. But I think that it's always very important to let them know that seriously, you can be killed doing this. So a couple years ago, I got my instructor rating and started teaching people how to fly paramotors. And I make that like the very first thing that's discussed. And I look them dead in the eyes and tell them, like, no matter what, like, no, you can die doing this. And I can't tell you how. I can give you some examples of ways that people can die, but it's something that when I tell the person, I want them to actually believe it, like believe it at their core.
I think, to speak from my mom's perspective, I know that my mom understands when it comes to aviation with me. I am so calculated that she feels comfortable with me skydiving, base jumping, maybe a little bit less, but she still knows I'm as safe as I can make it, and especially paramotoring.
Yeah.
I think from her perspective, she knows that if anything were to happen, it would probably be something out of my hands. It wouldn't be me doing something dumb, and the likelihood of that is very small, and I think she rests easy knowing that. I think that when it comes to motorcycling, she knows I'm a bit less responsible, and she doesn't like the motorcycle, and she knows that there's more external factors that I can't control.
Right.
And I've done much better with motorcycling. I definitely went through a phase that probably scared her more than I should have, but I think she understands that I mitigate everything as much as I can. My thought, like just hypothetically thinking about having a family, I think if I had a spouse that was supportive, I would probably continue doing everything the same way I'm doing it now, mitigating it as much as possible. But I feel like if I were to have kids, I want to say that impact on their lives would be far greater, like having young kids, that I'd probably have to stop certain things. Probably the motorcycle would be the first to go with kids, because I think that's objectively the most risky.
You think that the motorcycle is the most dangerous thing out of the things that you do?
I think so.
Okay.
And I think that's because, one, there's so many external factors that you can't mitigate.
The cars that are going to kill you. Yeah.
And two, I know personally I lack self-control in that.
Okay.
I have so much self-control and discipline when it comes to paramotoring.
Right.
But when it comes to the motorcycle, if I'm in the wrong mood, the wrong song comes on, I'm splitting lanes,
Send it.
doing 130, and it's not good.
Right.
And I wouldn't care to lose that. I think if I had kids, that would be something I wouldn't mind losing. I think base jumping, I would probably change the locations that I jump.
Okay.
Just considering that, like, I can mitigate a lot of risk, but I can't not have an off heading. I think inevitably an off heading opening is going to happen, and it might not be good. And jumping a cliff and off heading can end in tragedy. Jumping a bridge is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I had kids, I think I would continue paramotoring in a very similar way that I do now. Probably get rid of the motorcycle, and I would dial back certain base jumps.
Right. I told you earlier that I would love to do base jumping.
Mm-hmm.
The reasons that I wouldn't do base jumping, and what a great opportunity for me to, bounce these ideas off of you to get your thoughts. I do skydiving.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get into something, I go off the deep end in trying to understand it as well as I can. So with skydiving, the reason that I feel okay with it is because of the statistics. Statistics matter. They count. They mean something. And malfunctions happen in skydiving. But you have this reserve parachute that you can deploy, and the effectiveness of that reserve parachute is 99.9. It's freaking outrageously. It's proven itself to be something that actually will save your life. It's not like the reserve parachute on a paramotor, for crying out loud. How many videos have you seen of people tossing their reserve and it just goes right into their main?
Yep.
Well, we don't call it that, the main, but the glider. That's a thing, and it's common. And that's why the idea of a malfunction on a paramotor and throwing the reserve, it's like, oh God, I really hope that that this reserve works. I know some individuals will carry 2 reserves just in case that first one goes into the glider. God forbid the second one goes into the glider. You're like, damn, I really thought I was, doing what I needed to do. Okay. So skydiving, there's a reserve that will save your life, statistically speaking. Base jumping, your reserve is not existent.
Yeah.
That to me is scary. Fortunately for the individual who's base jumping, they've only got a few seconds to live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, if your parachute malfunctions in base jumping, you're gone. You're gone. That's pretty crazy. You have to pack it perfectly. And remember how I said about the statistics thing? If you go online and you say, what is the most dangerous sport in the world? Searching. Base jumping. Base jumping is the most dangerous thing. And I know you got from people on your YouTube channel who pounded you for getting into it. Oh, you're irresponsible. You're dumb. You're everything under the sun because, you got a lot of people following you. So inevitably there's going to be people who are less than kind. But the fact remains, there is no plan B in base jumping. It's this has to work, or I am 100% dead. I don't know. So for me, from my side, like you said, you don't have kids. I have kids and a wife, and you don't have a wife yet. And I do want to talk to you about that coming up. But how long this podcast is? I mean, this can go on.
Yeah.
The idea of that is what prevents me, and also the idea of it opening, backwards and then flying back into the cliff. I don't think that is what necessarily leads to fatalities. You probably get pretty banged up and then slide your way down, and the canopy gets caught on something or whatever. But how do you come to terms with not having anything if the one thing you're relying on goes wrong?
I think there's a lot more nuance that you can bring into base jumping. And the one biggest thing is there's a thing called the BFL, base fatality list, and it's a very well documented list of every single fatality.
Okay.
And there's a cool website that breaks the statistics down year by year, and you can sort it by so many different things. Object being building antenna, span, earth.
Okay.
Slider up versus slider down,
Okay.
meaning like terminal or subterminal. And the highest, if you look in base jumping, the highest fatality rate is in wingsuit base.
Okay.
Mostly in Europe.
That makes sense because they're proximity flying.
Yeah. And that's what, you can make wingsuit base pretty safe, but I think a lot of it comes down to people don't want to just go fly out into the open air. They want to proximity fly. Right. So I think that's the leading cause is collision with terrain in the wingsuit environment, mostly in Europe.
Yeah.
So then you break it down a little bit further, and there's different objects: a building, an antenna, a span, a bridge, or earth. And obviously, looking at a cliff, that's probably the most dangerous because if you have an off-heading, you're going to hit it. A bridge, fairly safe. Twin Falls, Idaho, the legal object in the U.S. that everyone goes to learn how to base jump, pretty safe statistically. Like if you were to only jump at the bridge, statistically, I think it would be very safe.
You can survive hitting the water.
Not with anything, no parachute.
So you need some parasitic drag, like if the canopy messes up.
But if you break it down into different malfunctions, being a line over, a line twist, normally low speed malfunctions.
Okay.
So if you were to hit the water, you'd probably be uninjured. And it happens and people walk away fine. But I don't know. The thing is with base jumping, like I do mostly subterminal, which is like up to a 3-4 second delay.
Okay.
The heading performance, like the reliability of these parachutes is very high, especially in slider up. Like you pack them right, they're going to open. Every so often, you have an off heading. Knock on wood again. Yeah. I think through all of my base jumps, the worst I've had is like a 90-degree off heading. And I hate saying that because I don't want to have a 180, but I feel like I say that it's going to happen. But when you break it down like that, I think it becomes a lot more safe. And even if you break it down to subterminal base off of a cliff, let's say, you can stand on the edge of the cliff and you can give a weak push and you can pitch immediately. Now, two things: weak push, you're not going to be far away from the cliff when you open. And second, a short delay. The longer the delay, the faster the extraction of the parachute, the less that can go wrong.
Okay.
So on a short delay, I feel like there's a little bit more variance for off-headings or things to go wrong. But if you take the same cliff, you do a running exit, you push really hard, and you take a 3 or 4 second delay. Now you have speed, you have separation from the cliff, you have a long delay, you're getting out into open air, and you pitch that pilot chute, wham, bam, parachute opens. Most of the time it snaps open on heading. So that you can break down even the object and the type of jump to make it safer.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's base jumping, and there's a very fine line where you can mess it up. If you trip on exit, you do a front flip, you pitch unstable, you wrap your bridle, You tow it into the ground, you die.
God,
you are wearing a GoPro and you do a handheld jump and your bridle goes slack and it wraps around the GoPro.
Oh, no.
You tow it into the ground and you die. And you're talking 300 to 500 feet on a lot of these base jumps till impact. That's a max of, I don't know, 6 or 8 seconds.
Oh my God,
on a 500-foot cliff. I think it's like 6.5 seconds or something you have to work with.
Jeez.
So even when you can make it really safe, but at the end of the day, it's a very heads up, like
unforgiving.
Yeah, very unforgiving to any human error. So you got to like be on point. And that's where, like I was saying just the other day, I saw no point in jumping this new exit. If you had a right-off heading, you more than likely were going to get hung up on the cliff because it was like a V shape. And if you had the right-off heading, you're going into the V.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking broken leg hung up on a talus, helicopter has to come in, no good.
Damn, dude.
And even beyond that, like this was a new exit. And what turned out, the guy that jumped it, he was very surprised. We couldn't look straight down the cliff. There was a ledge 200 feet out that he barely cleared. So even we couldn't see it. And it was like, you're just taking a leap into the unknown. And it's probably going to work, but probably isn't good enough. So that's why I walked to the ramp and took a long run off this thing, got a good push, took a nice 3-second delay, opened on heading and flew away happy. Like I don't see the reason to do anything that's that elevated. And I try not to put myself in those situations because it's already dangerous enough. Like why would you make it more dangerous?
Have you known anybody to die in base jumping yet?
Yeah, fortunately not anyone like super close to me.
Yeah.
But
people you've know.
Have met.
Yeah.
Like gone on jumps and then you maybe send a couple Facebook messages here and there, like that type of friendship, but not anyone close, fortunately.
And do you know the cause of death for those individuals?
Back home in New Jersey, there was an antenna I scoped out and I never got to jump it, but I looked at it. Basically pretty low. I think it was 200 feet, which is reasonable, but they were doing a static line jump where you tie off a piece of brake cord to the bridle. So relatively safe. You're going to jump and the brake cord and the bridle is physically pulling the parachute out for you. Really good heading performance in general. Okay. You're going to open high at 200 feet, relatively safe jump.
It's basically the parachute comes out right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened was they climbed over the rail. They were ready. A car pulled in. They thought, oh no, it might be police. We don't want to get caught. They climbed back over. Bridle is tied off to the railing. The car left, wasn't anyone. They climbed back over the railing. That one little additional element that they weren't expecting, he stepped over the bridle in the wrong way and it was wrapped around his leg. So when he jumped, the brake cord broke because the bridle was wrapped around his leg and didn't extract the parachute.
Damn,
200 feet, couple seconds, dead.
Oh my gosh. What does it afford you?
Imagine winning the Mega Millions, say $500 million.
Okay. Yeah.
Like times that by 10
or
100. Like the euphoria of like, oh my God, this is insane. Like that's how I felt when I landed. Maybe that doesn't mean as much to anyone else, but like
for you,
it was like every time I landed, it was like, oh my God, like this is the best feeling in the world.
Do you still get that at the same amount?
Definitely not. And my perspective has definitely changed over time.
Right.
I still absolutely love it.
Sure.
It's not exactly the same, but it's still, especially like certain jumps are unique. Buildings are super incredible to me. Like, And it's not just like people break it down. They're like, oh, why would you're only free falling for like 2 seconds and the canopy and you're on the ground. It's like, it's over in a minute. Like that's stupid. But it's the whole process of like packing the equipment. It's like, hey, this thing is about to save my life, so I have to make it perfect.
Interesting.
I packed parachutes.
Interesting to look at that way. This thing's going to save my life from me trying to kill myself.
It's a self-responsibility thing too. It's like I'm taking my life into my own hands and I'm going to make it perfect. And I packed parachutes for 5 years and I hated it by the end of it. But
of course.
Packing my own base canopy, it's like this meditative process, making it perfect, getting it all rigged up. And then say you meet up with some friends and the bond between base jumpers is like you could go jump with some guy once and like you're brothers for life, essentially. Like,
yeah,
it's that type of thing.
Yeah,
and then
it's like you went to war together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's not the same, but that's what it feels like.
No, I get it. And I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I'm envious of you, by the way. I mean, for base jumping, I think it would be incredible.
It's awesome. And it's just the full circle.
Yeah.
Like, especially on a building, like you scope out this building and you're doing something illegal, and you have to,
your heart's racing.
You have to be smart, and you have to break down the pieces of the puzzle, and you have to sometimes play a little ruse and like trick people and get in an elevator or
concealing your parachute, your rig.
I know people that they do legitimate Uber Eats orders, but they put it in an Uber Eats bag, and they'll wait for an order to get called in a certain building, and they'll go there with the rig, and they'll take the elevator up and then pull the thing out of their Uber Eats bag and go figure out how to get on the roof.
Hey, gigs up. You just gave it away. All of these building owners out there are going to be like, Uber,
let me check your bag.
Check that bag.
Yeah. But no, it's like, I don't know, the entire sport is just something different.
Yeah.
And it gives me like some type of, it has this effect also.
Is it like orgasmic?
In a way, yeah. I would say that.
Yeah.
But it's also grounding in a way of like, I am a tiny little human that can go splat in 5 seconds. And it brings back this, what's the right word for it?
Gosh, I feel like I know what word you're thinking as well.
Yeah, it's not coming to me, but yeah, I don't know. It's just that you can be crushed like a little bug, and like it gives you gratitude, and it makes you feel like $1 million. Like you could, I don't know, do anything.
You don't have kids, and you don't have a wife. How is this possible for a guy like you who's so accomplished and also, not too bad looking. You're strong.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. What do they say? No homo?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. You find yourself in Arizona. You were growing up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, life dropped you in the desert. How'd that happen?
I talked about it in a video, and I got a little vulnerable, and I don't know. I might revisit and make another video.
Yeah.
I want to do like a 6 months of living in Arizona, how it's been, but I don't know. I mean, first off, I feel like people are like, oh, you're YouTube famous. You probably have girls all over the place. And that's just not true. It's like the demographic is like 50-year-old men, most likely.
Well, I mean, if you are into men.
Yeah, well, it'd be great.
Yeah, you'd have no shortage of them.
Yeah, but I don't know. The whole thing of moving out here was this crazy great relationship that happened, and just fell madly in love with this girl, and it didn't work out, and I tried for a while, and it just got to a point where it wasn't working, and I decided I'd always thought about Arizona, and I'd visited so many times, and I was like, I've lived in New Jersey my whole life.
Yeah.
This whole Arizona thing, it's been in my head. I'm like, now's the time to make a change.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of ended up out here. It was, honestly, the whole thing was very spontaneous when I look back on it, but whether that's good or bad, we'll find out as time passes. But yeah, I was just in New Jersey, and it was like getting depressing every winter. The winters just got to me, and you can't do anything. You can't fly and enjoy it. And then the whole relationship thing kind of came to a head in the middle of the winter. And I was like, I'm going to pack up my trailer. I literally left within a week of like deciding that I was leaving, packed everything up, made this spontaneous decision to go to Costa Rica on the drive out.
Yeah.
Left, went to Costa Rica. I was getting virtual tours of 3 different homes in Arizona from my friend that was a real estate agent. Mm. And he narrowed it down to this one. The other 2 were garbage. And,
there were more than 3 houses to choose from.
I had 3 on the list. He took off 2, and I put an offer in on this one. And like literally on the balcony overlooking a beach in Costa Rica, I put in an offer and like was submitting all my tax paperwork and all this stuff. Yeah. And then came back here and saw it for the first time, and I was like, I'll take it.
Are you in love with it? Like, what do you think of this area? When I was making the drive out here, I went through some very remote. Man, it was weird getting here, just off the beaten path.
Here's the honest answer, and this is what our spoiler alert want to convey. And
don't worry, nobody's going to see this video. Nobody will watch this.
So the area and the people and Arizona and everything is great. I don't have any regrets. I'm happy for the change. It's been an easy transition. There's always adventures going on. People paramotoring, people base jumping. A little less in the summer now that it's super hot, but the whole all that's great. But trying to enjoy it myself has been difficult.
Right.
And I know that the spontaneity of up and leaving and doing all this somewhat could be a good thing, because sometimes good things come from negative experiences and all that.
For sure.
But also it's just this constant running away from this problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm still working on a personal level, is trying to figure all that stuff out and just being able to be happy and enjoy what's around me. That's been a little bit of a struggle.
Do you feel like the number one thing missing from your life right now is a sense of connection with a significant other?
Yes.
Hey, no, seriously. That's
totally.
I've been there, and I was in that position before I met my wife, where it sucks. It's kind of hard to see the future. Yeah, I mean, it's what you want, but you don't have it.
Right. And especially coming from a situation where I had everything I wanted, and I saw this whole future, and to put it in perspective, I just explained how euphoric base jumping was.
Yeah.
None of that meant anything when I met this girl. That's how great it was.
Right.
And that shattered so many things. And now it's that's gone. And I'm trying to learn how to enjoy all the other things in my personal life again. And then, like you said, I'm 29.
Yeah.
And I never thought about marriage.
Yeah.
Up until I met this person, and I was like, "Oh, this is what it feels like."
Huh.
And now,
interesting.
That's how I feel. And I'm not someone that has a lot of friends or parties or never someone to sleep around. I just want a person. I feel like I'm a relationship person.
No.
I like having one person to live life with.
Yeah.
And not having that it does suck, but it's trying to figure out being happy on your own, as they say. And that's just what I'm focusing on. Going to the gym, doing stuff for myself.
I was 28 when I was basically in your position, minus a few million subscribers. But all jokes aside, I think that to you having the subscribers, that it's not deep inside of you. It's not who you are. You're just a guy who is out there looking for love in all the wrong places. No, that's a song. But seriously, I see a real similarity in that I had a really, really challenging relationship before I had met my incredible wife. And, I was down in the dumps, feeling totally confused, lost in life. And then I realized I've got to try to make myself happy on my own. And I got into paramotoring at that time. And I also was going to the gym. Side note, I showed you earlier the rinky dink arm versus the actual muscle arm there. For the listeners who aren't watching the video podcast, I'm flexing. And Tucker, tell him, what do you see? What do you see when I do the flex?
Just say the left one is significantly bigger.
Yeah.
But you got a good excuse. You fell out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, give me a break. No, I think working on yourself is so important. But the way that you describe this person that you met and the feeling that it gave you, dude, don't be fooled into thinking that can't happen again in a more significant way. Sometimes those things that capture your attention are a fabrication of your mind. You can definitely take that imagination when you meet that person and, like you said, see a future. But you have to come to the point where you realize and acknowledge that that's not who that person was. Like, obviously, my curiosity goes to, will Tucker even care about YouTube anymore? Will he be so deeply in love that, screw base jumping, screw this. Like, I am just head over heels in love. You check all the boxes. And when it comes to women, good women who are ready to kind of like settle down and just dedicate themselves to their husband, and for you to dedicate yourself to her. Mm-hmm. But man, I don't know. I just, I feel for you. And I think that, Arizona, like I told you before, has an abundance of individuals who care about their health and their well-being more so than other parts of the country.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't, have a hard time finding a beautiful woman out here.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm not in a position where I'm really looking. I'm just kind of,
focusing on yourself.
Yeah. And whatever happens.
Yeah.
I'm open to any possibility, but I don't know.
For me, like she found me, and I'm like, when I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
And so it did actually work out that way.
Yeah. Well, that's what everyone says. It seems that, it's when you're not looking that.
Right.
It hits you.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know. I want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So I feel like several times through the podcast, we touched on like the idea of like negative life experiences turning into positive ones.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how obviously this has been a very negative experience, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering in your recovery.
Yeah.
I'm curious what positives you've felt from it so far, and specifically with it being like legitimately a near-death experience, like it could have ended differently. If you feel any different, like if you feel more gratitude, if you feel like your life or your relationships have improved, things like that from specifically almost a life-ending experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What positives have come?
Okay. One of the greatest things that happened from it is in tough times, like with this one being no exception, you find out who your friends are, and you find out really those who pull through to be there for you. I cannot believe how supportive my wife has been through this experience.
She's great.
She really is. She's something else. I mean, great. Doesn't even scratch the surface on how fantastic she's been as far as taking care of me. She's been my nurse. She intently listens to the doctors and asks them questions at the appointments. Her one desire is for me to get back to being as healthy and strong as I can be. My relationship with my mom is even improved. That's a positive. Just to see her immediately drop everything she was doing and come out to El Paso and help with the kids, which is what allowed Leandra to be at my bedside every single night. She never had a moment where she was like, I'm just, I'm tired. I'm going to get back to the kids. If a wife did that, it would be understandable. But like when I told her, like I even suggested to her, I said, go home and be with the kiddos, and I'll be fine. And she literally said, I am never going to leave your side. And it makes me want to cry when I think about it, because it's so important to me. So really, like in this experience, I've seen so much beauty from people who've been so sincere. My impression on humanity has improved as a result of this, to seek human compassion towards me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this first episode of the podcast. The most important thing to me is that you gained something from it. And if you did, and you would like to support the show, there's a link in the description that will take you to my Patreon so that you can support the show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, if you're listening to the podcast, or thank all of you for watching, if you happen to be watching it on YouTube. Yeah, and I will see you in the next episode.